Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Between the Pillars, the Fisher's video podcast series where we get to meet staff, we get to meet some of our collections, and we delve a little bit more into some of the materials that we have here at Fisher. And again, I say here at Fisher, we're not quite at Fisher again. We're going to be doing the final 3 episodes leading into the summer remotely because of continued COVID-19 restrictions. You're still going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot about our current guest here on today's episode, Liz Ridolfo, who I'll introduce in a minute. Just a reminder, our services are still available to you. Please check our website. We do offer some research services, some reference, and some scanning. All that's available on our website. And hopefully come the fall, we should hopefully be reopening our doors to researchers. So just watch our website for any information about our reopening. In the meantime, welcome to my colleague Liz. Liz is actually one of my longest standing colleagues here at Fisher Library. We were just having a little chat just before this, and she reminded me that she, like almost every other person that's come through Fisher that works at Fisher, was either a working student or a practicum student. And I think, Liz, you were a practicum student. Is that right?
Yes, I had a practicum at the Fisher Library School. I was doing some digitization.
What were you digitizing?
There were a few photo albums. The first one that I remember working on was photos of West Africa. Really beautiful photographs of West Africa. So I put those on Flickr, and that was one of our first Flickr sets. So we have hundreds up there now, I think, but
that one's probably pretty hidden now. It's probably pretty far down the list in terms of what we have.
Still there, though. Still there.
That's good. The legacy continues.
Yes.
But then after you graduated, you actually also started working at Fisher as a paid employee. Isn't that right?
Yes, I did. I had a contract position as a Nichols Library Fellow for a period of time. I was still doing some digitization at that time, but I also started doing cataloging. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of cataloging, especially of the Canadiana backlog, and that it was a very big task. It took quite a long time, and it was an initiation into the Canadiana collection at the library. So we managed to get through several decades worth of backlog material, and now it's available in the library catalog. Some really fun stuff in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And well, that backlog still exists too, I think, doesn't it?
This is true. But the Canadiana backlog is significantly smaller than it was.
Okay, good. So, and then you finally became to us as a full-time librarian in 2013, 2014?
2011, I think.
2011, okay.
Oh, sorry, 2011 was
Nichols Fellow?
The Nichols Fellowship, yeah, so you're right. Okay. Yes, so I got the position as a Special Collections Projects librarian, and so I was doing some of the same work, but also working on different collections, one of which I'll be speaking about today, so the cookery collection, and as well as continuing to work a little bit on the Canadiana collection and the ephemera, and some women's history material, and also working on special digitization projects as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the cookery collection at Fisher. First of all, do you have like sort of a native interest in culinary research, or?
I did, yeah. I came to library school already with an interest in cookbooks, culinary culture, cooking television shows and things like that. And then when I was in Richard's rare books class, we had an assignment where we had to do an exhibition catalog for a proposed exhibition. Right. And so I decided to do it on cookery material after I searched the Fisher catalog and found that it had quite a few very interesting items that I really wanted to not only see, but sort of try to write about and bring together. So when I learned that the large culinary collection was due to come to the Fisher through a donation, I was really excited that I would be able to, I would have the opportunity to work with it.
Great. Actually, why don't we start the show and tell portion of it. Mm-hmm. The first things you're showing are actually something that you identified, and or at least one of them anyway, was something you identified for Richard's class. And for those that don't know, Richard Landon was our former director, and for many years he taught the main rare books class to the library school. And Richard's class was great because it was essentially just one assignment, and the one assignment was to create an exhibition, in this case pretty much a virtual exhibition. But it's amazing how many of those exhibitions that were done for Richard's class actually ended up being physical exhibitions down the road. One that I did, one that our head, PJ Carefoot, did on banned books. And this also morphed a little bit into its own physical exhibition down the road.
Yes, it did. I mean, it's a really wonderful way to get to know what we have at the Fisher and really sort of go deep into the collections. So the item on the left is a plate from Bartolomeo Scappi's Opera, which was one of the first books that I found when I was doing my searches for creating my catalog for the rare books class. So it's one of the earliest cookbooks that we have in the Fisher.
Right.
And it is especially important because of the illustrations that it has at the end. So it's something like several thousand recipes divided into 6 books. This illustration represents the idealized Renaissance kitchen with all the different stations that you would need to prepare different foods. There were also illustrations of how to cook outdoors, what you'd need to sort of cook on the road. Bartolomeo Scappi was the cook to 2 popes, and so the book is instructions on how to prepare these lavish meals, some of which would have several hundred courses just in one meal. So this is pretty much everything that you need, and it is also arranged seasonally and includes dishes related to fasting and Lent, so with different dietary restrictions and different times of year. So it's really comprehensive on how to prepare all sorts of things and everything that you need to put together a highly functional Renaissance kitchen.
Does the book, is it heavily illustrated, or is this one of the lone illustrations in the book?
There are maybe 7 or 8 towards the back, but most of it is not illustrated. It's very descriptive though. The beginning takes the form of sort of the author lecturing an apprentice and sort of teaching them how to preparing them for how to do all sorts of things in the kitchen. The illustrations are really important because there are so few illustrations in books of this period that are so detailed in terms of what they show, the workings of the kitchen, the workings of the dairy, and other parts of the house, and all of the tools that were necessary.
Was this in the Sciences collection, or was it in the general collection, or do you remember?
This was in the science collection.
Okay, because
so that's a good.
It does strike me that a lot of these books probably would have started out in the Sciences collection.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. That before our recent large donations, there was no dedicated cookery collection because many of these cookbooks are parts of other collections, like the History of Science and Medicine collection, or Canadiana collections, or ephemera collections. And so they would be in there because they have medical content or because they have other recipes for things that are not related to food.
Right. If you look at the next one too, I mean, you don't, without even looking at the title, you can tell this is Japanese.
Yes, yeah, the woodblock image shows 2 chefs preparing food. So this is another text that focuses on upscale seasonal cooking. Mm-hmm. So it also has something, how to prepare different dishes and what to make in every season. And this, while it would have been available for purchase by regular people, kind of would have been probably purchased to sort of flip through and imagine all of those things that are off limits to regular folk, to be able to eat things that were being consumed in sort of elite households that were off limits to the common people.
It's such
aspirational.
It's a charming woodcut, though.
It really is. It really is. There are a few others showing different seasonal ingredients and how to plate and how to sort of prepare and serve food.
Great.
So another large component of the collection is within the manuscript collection. So not its own separate collection, but we have a lot of handwritten materials, and within those are some manuscript cookbooks. And so I picked 3 from different periods that kind of reflect what we have, and that you can see from them that they're quite different just in terms of how they're written, and their contents are also quite different. the first two, the early ones, both have a mix of household recipes, like how to make ink and cleaning products, as well as cookery recipes and medical recipes. So you'll notice in the middle one, you have pudding on top of ink, on top of goose food, and then a cure for deafness. So this is one page that's really kind of encapsulates the range of household knowledge that would be required, that people would collect, so that they would be able to sort of be their own doctors, or deal with household issues as they came up. Every part of kind of the household, from managing the livestock to dealing with ill children to preparing the daily bread.
Beautiful hand in that middle one.
Yeah, the middle one, because it's so tidy, was probably copied from another messier manuscript. So we also have a few different kinds of culinary manuscript. Some of them are sort of a little more relaxed and can be contributed to by several different people at the same time. And some of them look as though they've been recopied from older manuscripts, which either were not as legible or maybe fell apart with use over time. And you can see in the top one as well, the treacle pudding, it has a credited name, which it was common with some of these, that they would get the recipe from someone they knew or from a printed source. And when they actually cite where it's from or who it's from, that's another entry point into studying these manuscripts, because you learn about the community and the reading habits of the people who put them together. And the doodle on the last one also reflects the character of some of these books. They'll have family information, they'll have birthdays, they'll have poetry, and act sort of as commonplace books in a way, or diaries, in addition to containing recipes.
Well, they're real social documents, I guess, in that regard.
Yes, they really are. I mean, and they run the gamut from extremely clean and tidy to heavily annotated with notes like not suitable, good, very good, and recipes completely crossed out, things tucked into them. So they're very some of them can be quite scrapbooky.
We can make our pitch too, to say if anybody has some of these things at their home that they would like to donate to us, we always love getting material like this into the Fisher and into our researchers' hands as well.
And if you bring them to us, it doesn't mean that you'll never see them again. We take very good care of them. In many cases, we digitize them, so you could consult them online or come back in and see them whenever you like.
Perfect.
So this next category is sort of the culinary ephemera and pamphlet category, which makes up a very large portion of our culinary collections. I should have mentioned early on, the formation of our new culinary collection is largely due to a large donation of material by Mary Williamson. So I think so far it's over 3,000 items, many of which are printed books, but also some of which are these smaller pamphlets or single sheet items. And they can come from the Canadian government, they can come from corporations, and they can also be produced by individuals. They're sort of smaller scraps that are less likely to have survived time. So in a way, they're more valuable than the larger printed books. So we see on the left that it is a government pamphlet trying to encourage people to eat more fish. So it's the Department of Fisheries, Marine and Fisheries in Canada. So the item in the middle would be, it's interesting because it shows people's participation in a culinary culture before television. So this would be a notebook for you to listen to broadcast on the radio that would teach you how to cook. And inside the book, you could write down the contents of each lesson and the recipes that they taught you, and then try them out yourself from wherever you were, as long as you could pick up CKCL in Toronto.
Yeah, it's almost like basically a promotional thing for both the radio and for Consumers Gas.
Yeah, Consumers Gas had a whole sort of household science department and kitchen where they would do these lessons, and they broadcast out of the Prince George Hotel, but they also did in-person demonstrations at the Consumers Gas Company to help people at home become more familiar with gas cookery and feel less threatened by the new gas appliances that were coming in.
Okay. And what's the last item with the dog?
The very cute dog is on a beer label. So we have a very large collection of beer labels, also very ephemeral. You know, you drink a beer, you peel off the label, maybe it disappears, or the bottle gets recycled. This one is for a temperance beer, so a non-intoxicating, low or no alcohol porter created during the temperance period. This one was created in Montreal. And so these labels have a lot to teach us about the history of graphic design and trends in taste in terms of what kind of beer people were drinking, where it was being produced. And also a lot of the breweries represented in this collection no longer exist. And so it's really good for looking at the history of different areas in the country and the brewing industry in those areas.
And speaking of Flickr, a lot of these have ended up on our Flickr site as well.
Yes, they're just too beautiful not to share. So quite a few of them are up there. A lot of them for breweries that used to exist in Toronto.
Great.
Part of the culinary collection, another part of the culinary collection is a large collection of menus. I think the earliest one is from the 1850s. Yeah. This one is from between the 1920s and the 1940s, and there are quite a few train menus and boat menus represented in the collection, and they're pretty interesting because transportation has changed so much.
Right.
The dining car, doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. People are not going on the same kind of long train journeys.
Right.
And the menus from passenger ships, going back and forth between Europe and North America. Some very sumptuous and interesting kind of meals served in different classes and different time periods. This one is not only interesting because it's specifically for children, so we can see the kind of food and the prices that would have been offered to children who were riding on the train. But the little poem and illustration at the bottom shows a black porter and waiter interacting with the children. So while this item doesn't necessarily include the staff of CN, in terms of who it's serving,
right.
Evidence of some of the people that are not represented by this menu and by the culinary collection in general can be found just by sort of looking a little more closely at the contents of the material.
Again, social history.
Yeah, it's really great. So the last couple items, I just wanted to show you these two cookbooks on the left. We have quite a few duplicates in the collection, multiple copies or multiple editions, even from the same year or the same book published over several years. And it's worth having them not only because sometimes the book changes, but because each owner can have a different sort of impact on the book. So the one on the right obviously was used more heavily in the kitchen than the copy on the left. And inside, I think, are some extra annotations, recipes tucked in, and other things that can show us exactly what the person was looking at and what they really used inside of the book. Whereas the one on the left, the sort of pristine copy, might be useful for reference, but it probably didn't spend any time in the kitchen. So I really like when we have this visual evidence of how this material was used, because in the end, while you can guess, it's impossible to tell what people actually cooked from these, unless they come out and say this was very good. You really only will be guessing about what they actually made.
So would these sort of be textbooks then that would be used in high schools? Would they be used in colleges? Do you know?
The one on the right was a domestic science textbook, I believe. So I think that this was from a high school. We do have quite a few that were used at high schools and at domestic science programs in university, right. in the University of Toronto as well. So they would have been used to teach, hygiene and cooking, basic elements of cooking, and all aspects of domestic science, which was an important avenue for women to get an education early in the period of women's education, especially at the University of Toronto.
Right. Interesting.
Hmm.
Great. Anything else for us?
I think
That's it. Okay.
that's the end.
I mean, what you said that that collection itself has, Mary's donation has something like over 3,000. Is that right? How far into the cataloging have you got into that?
We still have quite a ways to go, and being at home during the pandemic hasn't really helped us get too far. But some activities that we've been doing in terms of increasing access to the material has been digitizing some of the things like the menu collection that we already sort of have cataloged, and getting people to work on transcription projects related to the manuscripts. And so that's a way of making things more accessible, even though we can't actually catalog more items at this time. Material still keeps coming in. There's stuff in the backlog for this collection, and we're still purchasing material. So it's ongoing. Get back to it as soon as I get back in the building.
And as we said before, we're always open to hearing what you might have, anybody might have in terms of donating to the library as well, to really increase the importance of this collection.
Don't worry if you look at something and it looks kind of gross, or you think, oh, that's probably very common. People might not want it. Our collection is mostly Canadian, mostly up to around the 1960s, 1970s, with some British and a few other assorted things here and there. But there are things of interest from everywhere, so be curious to know what you have.
Is there like a dream thing out there that you would love to get your hands on that we don't already have in the collection?
Hard to say. We've been lucky and we've gotten quite a few things that we really like, but early culinary manuscripts are pretty hard to come by these days.
Right.
So 18th century is as early as we have, but getting something earlier than that would be great. They just few and far between these days.
Yeah, exactly.
On the
So
market,
anyway,
yeah.
this has been great, Liz. I hope everybody saved themselves for lunch until Liz presented what we had at Fisher in terms of our culinary materials. So thank you again. Liz actually is going to be going on a research leave in about a month or so. Are you doing anything with cookery, or is it?
Yes, part of my work will be working on an upcoming new exhibition related to the cookery material. So we did an exhibition in 2016 focusing specifically on Canadian culinary materials. So
Right.
The new one that I'll be working on will look at a lot of the other stuff that hasn't been shown.
Great. We're looking forward to that. So again, thank you, Liz. Thank you for participating. Enjoy your leave, because I don't think I will get to see you until you come back. So
thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks. Thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. As I said, we've got 2 more of these podcasts to go. Next one is in 2 weeks, and we're going to be looking at our Irish literature collection. So please tune in for that. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.